The coffee was just beginning to drip when the door opened without a knock, without a pause. I didn't even turn around. Only one person ever walked in like that anymore. Marcus. "Morning," I called out. Reaching for the jar of grounds, he didn't answer right away. Just stood there quiet. Then as I started stirring the sugar into my mug, his voice landed behind me, flat, certain. "My wife, our kids, and her mom are moving in. We already decided. You live alone." It's settled. The spoon stopped. My hand hovered midair, caught in the space between calm and collapse. I didn't turn around. "We already decided," he'd said. Not can we not. How would you feel if... Just decided. Like this house, like my life, was just one more room they'd rearrange to fit their needs. I let the silence stretch. Let it grow legs and lean against the cabinets. I needed him to feel it, but Marcus, as always, mistook silence for agreement. "There's no reason for you to be here alone, Mom. You've got 3 bedrooms. Ours is barely 2. The kids are crammed, and Martina's mom can't be left alone anymore. This just makes sense." I took a sip of coffee that tasted bitter now. My hand didn't shake. My mouth didn't open. But something inside me, something old and buried deep, did stir. I watched as he walked through the living room like he owned it, pointing at spaces like a contractor. "The kids can take your sewing room. Ottilia gets the guest room. Martina and I will figure out the rest." He didn't see me watching him. He didn't notice the way I gripped the mug tighter with every step he took across my floors. In that moment, I realized he hadn't come to ask. He'd come to announce. I said nothing, just nodded slightly. The kind of nod you give a man who's already forgotten how many times you've said yes before. And when he left keys jingling like victory, I poured the rest of the coffee down the sink. I stood at the sink, rinsing out the bitter ring of coffee left in my mug, and the sound of the water took me back 2 years ago. Same kitchen, same silence. That afternoon, Martina had called in tears. Her mother, Ottilia, had collapsed. A mass in her abdomen, something pressing on her organs. No insurance, no savings. They didn't know what to do. I remember hanging up and going straight to my bedroom closet. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out the little blue box I'd tucked away after Michael died. Inside was the wedding ring he'd bought me when we still believed love could carry us through anything. I sold it the next morning, quietly. No fuss, no announcements, just walked into the jeweler's and asked what they'd give me for a life I could no longer wear on my hand. It covered most of the surgery. The rest I filled in from savings. Marcus had thanked me briefly. Martina cried. Ottilia never called. I never told anyone how much it cost me, not just the money, but the surrender. That ring was the last thing Michael had given me before the cancer. Before the bills, before I became everyone else's solution. My house? This house was the only thing I'd ever built with my own hands. Paid off over 27 years. I cleaned other people's homes while raising Marcus and his sister alone, day shifts and graveyard shifts just to keep the roof steady. Now they looked at it like square footage, like a layout on a brochure. The guest room they wanted for Ottilia. I'd saved for that furniture for 6 months. The sewing room for the kids. That was my quiet corner, the only place that still smelled like peace. They hadn't asked because they never thought they needed to. I'd always said yes. Always stretched a little thinner so they could be more comfortable. But as I wiped the counter, a dull ache bloomed in my side like a warning. Something had torn. Quietly, deeply. And this time, I didn't think it would stitch back together. Marcus came back the next morning as if afraid that yesterday's conversation hadn't been clear enough. He leaned back in the kitchen chair, acting like he was laying out furniture in a dollhouse. "So the kids will take your sewing room. It's got great light for their schoolwork, and they'll have more space to play." He didn't look up to see my jaw twitch. twitch. And Attilia will be in the guest room, he continued. She needs the bed close to the hallway. Less walking. You know how she is. As if I'd ever been allowed the space to know anything about Attilia. And you and Martina? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He smiled, like it was already decided. We'll be on the pull-out in the living room for now. Until we figure things out. For now. Those two words always meant one thing indefinitely. I nodded slowly. Fingers curled around the coffee mug I hadn't touched in 20 minutes. Sounds? Planned? I murmured. He took that as agreement. Kissed my cheek, said he had to go rent a van for Saturday. When the door shut behind him, I sat still, counted to 10. Then I reached for the landline. I made 3 calls that afternoon. One to my friend Yvette, who still worked at the county clerk's office. One to a lawyer I'd met years ago during the neighborhood zoning dispute. And one to someone I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Someone who owed me a favor. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pace or panic. But something inside me had shifted into motion. The next day, Martina came by with a paper bag of sweet rolls and that practiced smile she wore when she wanted something. She walked in like she lived here, complimented my curtains, commented on how perfect the guest room was for her mother. Then casually, she said, "The kids are so excited. They've already packed their boxes. Leandro even chose which corner of your sewing room he wants." I nodded. Just once. "Oh," she added with a little laugh. "Hope, it's okay we told them it was official." I smiled back. Because in my mind it was official too. Just not the way they thought. Imelda showed up with 2 black coffees, and that look in her eye, the one she used when her daughter tried to guilt trip her into selling her car last spring. She didn't even sit before asking. They said what I told her, everything. Every smug word, every detail of the plan. Marcus had laid out like he was rearranging furniture in a storage unit. I told her about Martina's sweet rolls and her hope it's okay smile. I even told her about the lie they fed the kids. Imelda listened lips tight, nodding in all the right places. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer false comfort. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "You know this isn't about family. It's about control." I looked at her. I didn't want to believe that. But I remember when Marcus said he'd stay at Celine's for just a week after her divorce. Imelda raised an eyebrow. He was there 2 years and never paid a cent. She sipped her coffee. Because he knew he didn't have to. That part stung the truth of it. Marcus didn't offer rent, didn't ask if I was okay with giving up my sewing room, didn't even wait for an answer. He assumed I'd fold like always. Imelda reached across the table and took my hand. "You've always given, Karen, but giving isn't the same as being taken." "I know," I said. I just didn't want to admit it, not with my own son. "Well, it's time." We sat in silence for a moment before I pulled open the drawer beneath the phone and took out the envelope I'd started weeks ago before Marcus had even said a word. The deed copy, the will, the emergency plan I'd tucked away but never finalized. Imelda nodded, her eyes steady. "Then let's make it official." That night, she helped me pack up the documents, seal them in a file, and write out instructions. We weren't finished, not yet. But the line had been drawn, and once I drew it, I wasn't stepping back. I waited until Monday morning. No fanfare. Just a plain coat, a tote bag, and the manila folder tucked tight beneath my arm. The woman at the bank greeted me by name. "Just the usual deposit, Ms. Kirin." "Not today," I said. "I'd like to make a transfer." She glanced at the amount and raised her brows. "Are you sure?" I smiled. Very. It wasn't millions, but it was mine. Slowly built over the years from retirement checks I'd skimmed and weekends spent hemming curtains and patching jeans for neighbors. It was money no one else knew existed, not even Marcus. Especially not Marcus. By noon, the funds were secured in a new account under my name only. And by 2 o'clock, I was sitting across from a realtor at a tidy office near the old courthouse. "I've got a listing that just came up in Redfern Hills," she said. "One story. Quiet. Good light in the back room if you like to sew." I signed without hesitating. The papers were quick, surprisingly quick. She didn't ask why I was selling. I think she could tell I wasn't interested in small talk. She slid the final page toward me and handed over a smooth black pen. I signed. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I handed the pen back and folded my hands. "I'll notify you when your offer's accepted," she said. I think it already has been. I left the office lighter than I'd felt in months. By the time Marcus texted me that evening to ask if they could come by Saturday to start setting up, I already knew he'd never walk through my door again. I replied, "Let's talk first." I didn't owe him that. But I wanted him to look me in the eye when the door he thought was wide open quietly disappeared behind a lock he'd never noticed. I pressed send, and then I brewed a fresh cup of coffee, strong and black, and sat down to wait. The truck pulled up at 9:07 a.m. on the dot. I watched from the porch as Marcus jumped out, clipboard in hand, like he was directing a production. Martina followed, barking instructions to the movers while the kids tumbled out of the back seat, giddy and barefoot. Boxes labeled toys and kitchen spilled into the driveway. They brought folding chairs, houseplants, even a welcome mat. They didn't knock. They didn't pause. They assumed the door would open. It didn't. I stood at the top step, arms crossed, 1 foot, resting on the iron doormat I'd had since the first winter, after Kenneth died. "Nothing's coming in," I said. Marcus laughed, confused. "Mom, stop. Just open up. The guys need to start unloading." I shook my head. "This house is sold." Everything stopped. The sound, the motion, even the children froze. Martina blinked. "Sold. To a quiet woman from Charleston," I said. "She likes gardening and doesn't plan on converting the sewing room into a playroom." Marcus dropped the clipboard. "Are you serious? As a deed and a signature. You didn't even tell us. You didn't ask." The movers looked at one another, awkward and unsure. One finally asked, "Ma'am, do you still want the front cleared for delivery?" I shook my head. "You won't be unloading here." Marcus stormed up the steps. "What is wrong with you? We gave notice to our landlord. The kids. You made decisions based on a house that wasn't yours." Martina's voice cracked. "But we told the children. They've been planning. Then perhaps next time you'll plan with the owner." It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. The kind that comes from too many years spent being spoken over. Behind them, the movers slowly began to reload the boxes. The kids watched with wide eyes, holding a stuffed bear and a half-deflated ball. "You're throwing your own family out," Marcus hissed. I looked him square in the face. "I'm keeping them out." When the truck pulled away, every box still sealed, every item untouched. He came back Monday afternoon uninvited, but not alone. Uncle Ned trailed behind him, holding his cap in his hands like it might shield him from what was coming. Marcus didn't even knock. He just barged in, his voice already raised. "This is getting ridiculous, Mom." I stood in the hallway, arms crossed, blocking the kitchen. "You wouldn't talk to me, so I brought someone neutral. Someone who remembers when you used to be reasonable." Uncle Ned gave me a sheepish nod. "Saren, honey, maybe we can all sit down for a minute." I didn't move, but I let them follow me into the dining room. I placed 3 mugs of coffee on the table, mine still steaming, theirs already cooling. Marcus jumped in first. "We were counting on that house. You blindsided us. The kids are confused. Martina's been crying for days." I said nothing. Ned cleared his throat. "Nobody's saying you didn't work hard for it, Saren. But family's family. And maybe just a few months would have helped ease the transition." Still, I said nothing. Then came the flattery. You've always been the rock, Marcus said, voice softening. The strong one. You raised us alone. We just assumed you'd understand. I slid a folder across the table. Neither reached for it. Inside was everything: the deed, the sale, the bank, transfer, the new property title. All signed. All dated. All mine. Marcus finally opened it. His face shifted slowly from smug to stunned, then furious. You planned this behind our backs. I met his gaze. No. I planned it quietly, because I learned that speaking out only gave people time to stop me. Uncle Ned leaned back like the air had gone thin. You really went through with it. Yes. But the house, the memories, it was never yours to take. Marcus stood too fast, the chair scraping hard. You think this makes you strong? You just cut off your own family. No, I said calmly. I finally stopped pretending the chains were love. He left without a goodbye, slamming the door like punctuation. I picked up my coffee and called Imelda. It was time to pack. I signed the final set of papers with a steady hand, the pen gliding across the lines, with something that felt a lot like relief. The notary smiled, said congratulations, and slid the packet into a thick manila envelope. The house wasn't mine anymore, and I was glad. The realtor, a woman named Danielle, with kind eyes and a firm handshake, handed me a single silver key. Welcome home, Saren, she said. West Eugene's quieter than you'd expect. I think you'll like it there. I nodded, clutching the key in my palm like it might vanish. 2 bedrooms, a bright kitchen, and a patch of earth out back waiting to bloom. No ghosts, no assumptions, no footsteps stomping through like they owned the place. Danielle offered to walk me to my car, but I shook my head. I needed the last moments alone. Inside the empty house, the one I'd scrubbed and painted and held together for decades, I walked from room to room without saying goodbye. I didn't owe walls a farewell. I owed myself a beginning. The hallway still smelled faintly of cinnamon from last December. The laundry room had a squeaky floorboard I wouldn't miss, and the sewing room, my sanctuary, was stripped bare, but still echoed with the rhythm of my machine. I locked the door behind me, tucked the key under the mat as instructed, and didn't look back. The bungalow sat beneath a maple tree with turning leaves, even though it wasn't quite fall. A bird bath leaned slightly in the yard. The walkway was cracked, but clean. Inside, the air was light, fresh, untouched. The kitchen windows opened toward the sun, spilling gold across the floor. I stepped into the bedroom, my bedroom, and exhaled fully for the first time in weeks. No one had ever lived here calling me selfish. No one had ever barged in or assumed I owed them the furniture. This was mine. The deed had my name, not their titles. I set my bag down on the counter, poured myself coffee, and walked barefoot into the yard. Tomorrow, I'd plant lilies. Today, I'd rest. The call came just after breakfast, right as I was rinsing out my coffee mug. An unfamiliar number flashed across the screen, but something in me already knew. Miss Karen Lowell, the voice asked, smooth and practiced. Yes, this is Jared Teague, representing Mr. Marcus Lowell. He's filed a petition contesting the recent sale of the property on Ferndale Avenue. He alleges that the transaction was conducted under mental duress and that you may have been manipulated or coerced. I laughed. Not politely, not bitterly, just a real chest-deep laugh that startled even me. I see, I said, once I'd caught my breath. And has your client provided any evidence for this fantasy? There are some familial concerns, ma'am. His claim is based on a belief that you were not acting in full capacity. If we could schedule a conversation, you can tell your client I cut in to contest something he actually owns. That house was mine. Legally. Completely. And no one, least of all him, had a claim to it. There was a pause. I wiped my hands. Dry walked to the filing cabinet in the corner and pulled out what I knew I'd need. My last full medical report signed 2 months ago. A clean bill of health, sound mind, stable mood, strong memory, better cholesterol than his, I'd wager. I'll fax over my medical clearance power of attorney records and the notarized sale agreement. You'll find them in perfect order. Yes, ma'am. We'll review the documentation once received. One more thing, I added softer now. I'm not angry. I'm not even surprised. But please do remind your client I'm his mother, not his asset. And I don't need his permission to live my life. I hung up before he could respond. Some words don't need echoes. I watched the light move across my garden, touching the unopened lily bulbs. I thought of Marcus. Not the boy I raised, but the man who'd turned me into a line item on his wish list. Let him try the courts. Let him try the guilt. I had documents. And a spine. The kitchen smells like dark roast and cinnamon, my new favorite pairing. The sun is just beginning to filter through the lace curtains I stitched last week, the ones I couldn't bring myself to hang in the old house. Too delicate. Too mine. This morning, I fixed a neighbor's sewing machine. Her name's Janine. Retired nurse. She brought it over in a panic, threads tangled and needles stuck. We ended up chatting for an hour about fabric choices and grandchildren. When she left, she handed me a small bundle of zippers and said, "Just in case you get bored." I never get bored anymore. My mornings belong to me. My afternoons too. The only feet that walk through this house are ones I've invited. There's no slam of a toy box, no hum of expectation in the air. Just silence. Not the lonely kind. The steady, honest kind that fills a space the way it's meant to be filled. By the window sits a framed photo of Leighton and Mason, my grandkids. They came by last weekend. Marcus didn't stay long. He lingered on the porch like it wasn't his to enter. It wasn't. But the kids ran to me squealing and bright, and I made them cinnamon toast the way I used to. They come on my terms now. When they leave, the house doesn't feel hollow. It feels right, full of echoes I invited, not ones imposed. I rinse my coffee cup and wipe the counter, then walk down the short hall to the bedroom. On my way, I pass the mirror hanging beside the bookshelf. I pause. It's not the lines in my face I notice or the silver streak at my temples. It's the eyes. Calm, certain, unapologetic. I lean in slightly like I'm greeting an old friend. Then I say it out loud just to hear it in the room. Saren Hollis. Not mom. Not grandma. Not just until we get back on our feet. Just me. And I smile because for the first time in decades, I mean it. The doorbell rings.